barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa wala. Welcome everyone to the 4th International Conference on Engineering Professional Ethics and Education, which is acronymed as ICEPEE 21. And also welcome to our first keynote session of ICEPEE. Let's start our session with the recitation of Surah Al-Fatiha. First of all, it's my pleasure to have a very lovely speaker, Professor Odeh Al-Jayyousi. He is a professor in water resources and environment. He is currently the head of technology and innovation management at the Arabian Gulf University in Bahrain. He was the vice president for science and research at the Royal Scientific Society in Jordan during 2011-2013. He also was the regional director for the International Union for Conservation of Nature, IWCN, West Asia Regional Office during 2004 and 2011, where it is headquarters is in Switzerland. He was an academic director for Master of Science program in Transformational Management in the UK. He was a consultant with UN ISQA on technology for sustainable development, and he authored several books, among which is Islam as Sustainable Development, 2012, in the UK, Renewable Energy and Knowledge Management, 2015, and Integral Innovation, 2017. He also served as the Dean of Scientific Research at Applied Science University in Jordan. He is a member of UNEP GEO 6 Global Advisory Panel, WANA Think Tank, and Arab Thought Forum. Professor Odeh is my countrymate, and ironically, my first time I met him was actually here in IIUM in the Kulliyyah of Engineering a few years back. He was on an invitation by, if I'm not mistaken, by ICEPEE, and he is very much involved in sustainable development and innovation. Today, Professor Odeh will be speaking to us on a very important topic, which is very close to the hearts and minds of, I would say, many of IIUM staff and community, which is on sustainable education, in particular sustainable engineering education. Please welcome Prof. Odeh. And Prof, the virtual floor is yours. Please proceed.
Thank you. Can I see my screen, or can I see my screen, please?
Yeah. You can share your screen, Prof.
You can share it now.
Do I need to share my screen one more time, or?
Yes, I think so. I think so. You can start again. Start share screen.
Okay. It's disabled. Can you enable me to share screen, please?
All right. Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah. Walhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. I'm pleased to be today with you virtually. I hope next time the pandemic will be over and we'll have a new normal and meeting you face to face. Today, my talk will be basically about a new discourse about sustainability in engineering education. And I'll try to link it to some Islamic worldviews and Islamic notions. Basically, I will address the context of sustainability and education first. Then I will talk a little bit about how we can rethink sustainability in educational domain, and some key messages very briefly and to the point. First, the context of higher education. We can see now in many cases there is internationalization of higher education. There is a lot of interest in branch universities and branding higher education in terms of quality assurance and in terms of excellence. However, also there is also some sort of massification of higher education, and the private sector is now working to develop a profit out of higher education. We need to be careful that higher education is a public good, sila amma, and the public goods means that you need to have it affordable, and you need to have it as a human right, not as a privilege. So education as a human right is one of the basic notions of ethical dimension in education. It's like fresh air and oxygen. So we need to make sure that how we can ensure equitable, affordable, and quality education for all. In terms of disruptions, in innovation, we talk about creative tension or creative disruption. The COVID-19 represented a disruption, and we believe in the last decade or so, as we all know, there was huge disruption in terms of technology. There is, in terms of a generation X and Y and Z, the people who were born after in the 90s and early 2000, now they are more connected to the technology. I myself, in my generation, I believe that I consider myself as a technology refugee. However, my kids are technology citizens, digital citizens. The global trends, now we need to rethink our business model, how we can have a local identity. With the globalization, sometimes we end up in what we call commodification of education. We do not want to deal with higher education as a commodity, sil'a, but rather we'd like to have higher education as part of emancipation, part of global empathy, and part of rahma lil alameen, and part of ensuring falah and progress to humanity. That's the role of higher education in terms of emancipation and in terms of decolonizing our minds. The education, the role of educator is being changing. Now, educator is a facilitator. We focus on student-centered education. We need to also rethink our educational outcome. Do we want basically just people who are good in STEM, in science, technology, and education, without appreciation to human values and without appreciation to ethics? So now we need to embed our own notions of STEM by embedding different notions of ethical values inspired from Islamic worldviews. Again, with COVID-19, we are learning that we need to have agile and resilient education. The infrastructure of ICT and the empathy of people, and to having one-to-one communication with students is very critical in a global era during the COVID-19. Now, I would like to address this question: what constitutes a good engineering education? And very briefly, we are talking about 3 main points. So my talk will focus on 3 main dimensions. The first one is about sustainability, which I call it Haya Tayyiba. I translate sustainability in Arabic as Haya Tayyiba, good life. And the other notion is about digitalization, how now we are shifting in a digital era to a digital economy, or what we call network society. Network society, meaning that you are connected to the Internet of Things, there is a machine learning, and there's all sorts of technology connectivity as one of the key messages worldwide. The third component is about future jobs and employability. our kids, the younger generation who are studying now at schools, they have to be prepared for different type of skills and different type of competencies. In many nations, they believe now the focus should not be on degrees. You have an MBA or a master degree, but rather should be focused on competencies, maharat. So these are the three notions that I'd like to focus in today's session, which is sustainability, digitization, and employability. First, in terms of sustainable development, we need to realize that part of the root causes of lack of sustainability and destruction of habitat and species and climate change and pollution, fasad. This notion of fasad, which I call it pollution as fasad, is the root cause for this environmental crisis is basically ethical and moral. There is a spiritual problem, and that's why we end up in what we call a market failure. A market failure means that you have basically greed from private sector, and there is no consideration of respect to sustainability and fitra principles of climate and of habitat and our ecosystem. That means we need to reposition the role of educators and the role of our students to have the notion of stewardships or khalifa, trustee and khalifa and a witness, shahid and khalifa. The role of all of us as humans, we need to define and redefine our roles as not only consumers, like in a market terminology, but rather our role is to add value to life and to create value and to be stewards, witnesses, and khalifa. And we have responsibility in order to make sure that there is a balance in terms of air pollution or in terms of carbon emissions or species destruction. So we have a responsibility. لعلهم يرجعون ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس ليذيقهم بعض الذي عملوا لعلهم يرجعون صدق الله العظيم. So لعلهم يرجعون, the role of education is to enable us to rethink, to regain consciousness, and to regain our GPS. The role of our education system is to make sure that it will give us the right GPS and the right compass to navigate in this troubled water. Again, disruptive education, we need innovation in education methods, education curriculum development, and in terms of relationship between institutional reform of our institutions to make sure that they are open to new ideas, and also to make sure that we develop what we call global citizenship, لتعارفوا, the notion of cross-fertilization of knowledge or co-creation of knowledge is basically an ethical principles, and we need to build what we call a learning organization in our engineering and higher education institutions. Again, we need to prepare new students for a new world, especially in this type of disruptive era. An ethical human reflective practitioner who is able to contribute to a new discourse of Islam as a way of life rather than just a focused domain, a simple domain or a narrow domain. Now, what's needed to foster sustainable learning in times of COVID-19? These are four components. One is we need to focus on interdisciplinary learning across sectors. So an engineer needs to understand social sciences, need to understand the human sciences, and need to understand the history of science and technology during the golden era, the methodology of research during Islamic era, what we call Islamization of scientific knowledge. We need to realize that there was a certain methodology that is based on realizing that everything in this world is in a state of tasbih. وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا يُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِهِ وَلَكِنْ لَا تَفْقَهُونَ تَسْبِيحَهُمْ كُلٌّ قَدْ عَلِمَ صَلَاتَهُ وَتَسْبِيحَهُ. Every living thing in this universe is in a state of a prayer, tasbih and sujood. And we, in our research, we need to realize that when we do good research, we are part of this symphony of life. Focusing on interdisciplinary learning, action learning, problem-based learning, case studies. Now in the COVID-19, we need to focus on a project-based learning and innovation labs, having virtual labs, and also what we call experiential learning. Understand the phenomena, understand what we call action learning using ethnography, grounded theory, or phenomenology, understanding beyond the engineering solution to understand also the socio-technological regime, the socio-technological ethics behind it. Digitalization, the second component that I talked about, again, in many universities now in the world, they are exploring and applying, actually, adopting and diffusing different type of learning technology and management systems of learning, including augmented reality, virtual reality, and focusing on project-based learning to ensure more reflection and more deep understanding, learning for understanding, and also developing what we call urban labs and eco-green innovation labs. Now machine learning and artificial intelligence is to be good that engineering is understanding and applying part of the courses that includes AI and machine learning, and to be prepared for the future jobs. The key messages, I have 6 ideas to conclude my presentation. I have 6 ideas that I will address in the coming few minutes to ensure a sustainable education in engineering. The first idea, we need to open up our lessons and lectures in engineering. That means we need to instill what we call system thinking in teaching. You need to understand the entire system. We live in an open system, not a closed system. So even when you teach chemical engineering, you need to realize the biology of it and the social and the technological part of it. So we're not talking about only just BOD or COD, but rather need to understand why this is happening at the policy level and also at the social level and the human level. So if you want to have GMOs, you need to realize the ethical value of having GMOs, for instance, or genetic engineering. System thinking is a critical. We need to open up lessons by more enhancing communication skills for our engineers. Also harnessing the power of data analytics, visualization, and also the role of big data. Now we live in what we call a big data era, and the cloud computing, and we need to make sure that engineers realize the power of communication and the power of visualization. Again, this is part of our social responsibility as in terms of ethics and professional ethics, is to develop what we call a proper innovation. In many cases, we don't want our scientists, our good brains, to focus only on the research agenda for the industrialized world. We need to set our own agenda in our developing in our countries. So it can be part of our own local needs in terms of water, food, and energy, and sustainability. So what we call frugal innovation, ensuring that we are addressing the needs for refugees, we are addressing the needs for rebuilding our cities that are now under conflict and under war. So we need to have engineers who have the right capabilities to have the perspective of a proper innovation and the frugal innovation, addressing the needs for the marginalized and the voiceless. Innovation in pedagogy, methods of learning, living in online communities. We need to introduce a new methodology for understanding the phenomena. I'll talk later at climate change. Climate change is not only about numbers, about CO2 emissions or changing the bulb, but rather it's deeper than that. It's about healing the planet. It's about how it's the relationship between man and nature, the relationship between our spiritual relationship between the planet and the cosmos. So we need besides objective approaches in research, we need to look at phenomenology, grounded theory, and ethnography to understand the subjective part of research. So it's not only about numbers, there is a story behind it. STEM and STEAM, and even some people talk about STREAM, not the add R for religion. So instead of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, we need to add art and religion, STREAM, by adding A and R. So having the ethics in our education, you need to have to combine the mind of a scientist and the artists, and also the ethics of a person with taqwa. Tap into students' digital knowledge. Now we live in different generations, X, Y, and Z. The younger generations now are more connected. They are more into technology, and we need perhaps during the crisis, this pandemic, to apply what we call the flipped classroom. So students have the material in advance and they prepare it at home, and the class or the Zoom lecture will be about discussion. It's not about spoon feeding. Again, these generations, X, Y, and Z, the future, we need to prepare the future generation into future jobs, which, as you know, there is focus on water and environmental engineering and nanotechnology and green technology. Again, robotics, data sciences, virtual reality engineering, and augmented reality engineering in education and engineering. There's also overlap between disciplines, and aerospace engineering, and depending on our research agenda and our priorities for our own national and Islamic countries. The key findings of these generations, they are more demanding, they are more global, and they are looking for experience, but they have social responsibility. Number three, the third message I'd like to share with you is we need to get real with the projects. We need to redefine sustainability science based on Islamic values, what we call Islamization of knowledge, Tawheed, Fitra, and Ihsan. We need also to link sustainability science with policy analysis. So what does it mean in terms of applying this to our institutions, at the Ministry of Water or Environment or Public Works or Education? So linking sustainability with the policy analysis and linking to practice. What does it mean for a practitioner? And also looking at the social dimension for people who are living in rural areas, for the poor and marginalized. What does it mean to have a sustainable livelihood? Again, a proper innovation, what we call frugal innovation. Many developing countries, even under war, they develop innovative solutions. So refugees and people under occupation, they apply simple solutions. You don't have to have high technology. You can use your own resources like farming, fishing, your local soil to develop independence. So education for independence, education for sovereignty is very critical, and you don't have to have high tech. You can use what we call simple solutions and simple ideas to apply and to move to help your society. Number four, help students to be teachers. Again, we need to reform our institutions at all levels. Now the public sector, the private sector, now they are developing what we call corporate university. So basically the corporate university is keen to enhance competencies for specific skills. So it's not about a degree to have an MBA or Master of Engineering, but rather to have basic competencies in building or renewable energy or audit or simple, very competency-based rather than degree-based. Again, we need to develop in engineering what we call a learning organization, which is characterized by system thinking, team learning, and self-mastery. Learning organization is very critical since we observe in many contexts that individuals do learn, but organizations do not learn. So we need to enhance what we call civic intelligence and social learning at all levels, individual, organizational, and societal. The new classroom in the last few centuries, still the classroom is not changing. It's now we need to rethink with with a new technology, as you can see, robotics and visualizations. We need to develop our labs to be more interactive and to be more technology smart. Again, open sources, massive open online courses. It would be good for enhancing our local knowledge and the notion of Islamization of knowledge and engineering to develop our own MOOCs, massive online open courses that has the basic values of trust, what we call stewardship, being a witness, shahid or khalifa, having the idea of ihsan, and redefining the notion of success, falah, and redefining the notion of happiness, sa'ada. So all of these needs to have an open online courses to promote Islamization of knowledge notions and curriculums. Again, many initiatives, as you know, Khan Academy, Coursera, now they develop their own courses, but I think we need to have our own courses in the Islamic world, since IIUM have a certain mission and vision. So we need to have our own curriculum that reflects our identity and our values. Number 5, measure what matters. We need to measure our KPIs in terms of excellence. What type of a graduate do we want? We want people with not only logical analysis or technical competencies, but also a sound personality, sound mindset, and sound understanding of the world. Number 6, finally, we need to help teachers also to become students. Ourselves as teachers working in the academia, we need to unlearn what we have been learning in the past. We need to improve our competencies and develop our competencies in new domains in terms of artificial intelligence or coding or visualization or data analytics, and also learning from our students. This is a nice quote. We shape our tools, then our tools shape us. Again, for the sustainability journey, we need to localize SDGs, working with Sustainable Development Goals for the year 2030. There is a journey, there is a path. We need to, education for sustainability is crucial to instill the competencies for sustainability for both at society, ecology, and economics. So engineers need to have sound understanding of socioeconomics, and also to localize SDGs. Islam and climate change. I just want to share with you some debates in the environmental movement in terms of how we should look at global issues of environment. In simple terms, we look at we look at the notions of climate change not only as numbers, but rather as the root causes of our relationship between the planet as stewards and trustees. So understanding the methodology based on Islam is critical to have this empathy and this deep understanding of our relationship between man and cosmos, what we call eco-cosmic intelligence. Understanding the story of creation of the universe, al-khalq, and the story of money. In a market economy, money increases with being more debt, and money increases with consumption. The banking system have skewed the idea of wealth creation. So we need to be aware of the two notions of creation, al-khalq, and the idea of money and the value of money. And this needs what we call Islamization of sustainability science. IIUM, I think, as part of their mission, we need to instill the notion of a deeper understanding of the story of creation, al-khalq, and deep understanding of economics and money, and how money need to be based on assets rather than virtual reality. This is basically shay in Quran. Shay in English, shay means material things, non-living. However, in Quran, shay means وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا يُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِهِ. Shay means it's alive, it's intelligent, and it's articulate. وإن من شيء إلا يسبح بحمده ولكن لا تفقهون تسبيحهم كل قد علم صلاته وتسبيحه. So unlike secularism and materialism, we don't believe that shay is only a material. We believe that the atom, even in quantum physics, they talk about the consciousness of particles and atoms in the experiment of electron in quantum physics. So even in quantum physics, they are realizing that everything is alive, intelligent, and articulate. This leads me to the triple I model, Nexus, which I call it Iman, Ilm, Ijtihad, faith, science, and innovation. The triple model in education, it builds the notion of we need to have, in order to have innovation, it has to be founded on Iman, on faith, and also it has to be found on solid science and on science. And in order to play our role as median community, Ummah Wasat, we need to ensure to redefine what good life, al-Hayat Tayyiba, to ensure success, Falah, and to ensure Imran, the construction of our distracted cities in Damascus, in Baghdad, and everywhere in the world. Also, education and ethics is linked to our dignity, respecting ourselves, our dignity, our legacy, our four grandfathers who, from Al-Bayruni to Ibn Sina to all the scientists. We need to build on our dignity, that we have a responsibility and ethical responsibility to communicate knowledge and to develop a new science and new vaccines. Not only vaccines for COVID-19, but vaccine for poverty, a vaccine for unemployment, a vaccine for corruption, and a vaccine for poor governance. So we need multiple vaccines for all disciplines. Again, learning from nature is very critical for sustainability, appreciating the symphony of life. وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا يُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِهِ. Everything is in a state of tasbih. Learning from nature is critical. Imagination can be inspired from ecology. Education for sustainability, we need to shift from a machine model to more human responsibility and to more ethical and global citizen, to embody the notion of rahma lil alameen, mercy for humanity. If we embed that we learn and we have education for not only for financial wealth, which is fine, but also for rahma lil alameen, to produce vaccines at all levels, as I just mentioned before. Again, looking at our national happiness, we need to go beyond sustainability index and sustainability index happiness. Now people talk about national happiness index. So we need to look at a quality education that looks at culture, heart, and mind. Changing heart and mind, it's part of our professional ethics in order to have falah, or a genuine national happiness. Finally, I think we need for a new discourse for sustainability to look at the power of now. We don't delay action now. We have the power of perspective, understanding the global issues from Brazil, the BRICS, the G20, what's happening at the global arena in ICESCO or the global world, and understanding the power of networks and connectivity, and ensuring that we have a median community, al-Ummah al-Wasat. Water, energy, food nexus, it's very critical for sustainability. Looking at the linkages between water, energy, and food and sustainability is critical to have a livable world, because we cannot invest on a polluted planet or a dead planet. Again, we want healing at all domains. Our role as engineers, as thinkers, as administrators, as students, we need to think of our relationship with the universe as rahmah. So healing at all domains. We don't want just to fix the bulb or to reduce emissions only, but rather we need to count on hope and optimism, not to count on fear, because the global environmental discourse is about destruction, that there is also fear of destruction or collapse of ecosystems. We need to instill the notion of فليغرسها إذا قامت الساعة, كما as in the hadith, إذا قامت الساعة وفي يد أحدكم فسيلة فليغرسها. If it's the last day of judgment and you have a small palm tree, just plant it. So our role is to have a positive thinking, the power of positive thinking, the power of positive action, and the power of optimism and hope is critical for a sustainable future. Finally, we need to engage to make university a learning organization and embody project-based learning through innovation labs to address the issue of sustainability, digital world, and employability for the future jobs. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Okay, thank you. Professor Odeh, thank you very much. Very enlightening speech. I think what you have addressed is very critical on redefining education so that it will be equipped with ethics and spirituality, and so that we can recreate the role of our graduates as human as a global citizens. I believe that who are from IIUM and listening to you would think that you've been attending all our internal discussions about sustainability and the role of education that we are actually hoping that we can achieve. It's very, very much in line with what we are actually working on, and our rector is pushing towards this kind of new era of education. While the participants are preparing their questions, let me just start with one question which might be on the mind of many people when we talk about redefining education, Prof. And so that we want the graduates or the graduates to be more aligned to society and community, and education should not be a commodity, and it should be society and community needs driven rather than industry driven. We come back to reality that when people join universities, they are looking for certificates that that will enable them to join the workforce and to find a good job with good payment, so they can enjoy their life and have they can provide for themselves, start their families, and so on. So there is this kind of dilemma between these two. So at the end of the day, the graduates will still look at what industry wants, because that's where they will be employed. And they will go and learn what the industry needs, and not that what actually the community or the society, or even you mentioned about education to help and serve the marginalized and the voiceless people. So how do we actually balance between these two?
Thank you, Dr. Ma'an. Very interesting questions. Very legitimate question. I think in many cases, we need to balance between both, I believe. In many cases, entrepreneurship and startups usually comes from engineering schools. Changing the KPIs, the key performance indicators for engineering or business schools is critical. We don't want to have people just to be employed all in the public or private sector, but rather we need to have people who have entrepreneurs. We are working with some German universities, and the KPIs for university is for a school that to have 50 to 60 startups by every year. So they are encouraging their students to start their own business. So maybe it's interesting model to blend our curriculum with ideas of entrepreneurship or of innovation, what we call business model innovation techniques. So a student will be able to combine engineering with business and to start his own work after graduation. And he knows all the links. So I think many businesses, they develop what we call social enterprise, like Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, or like many other initiatives. So I think the wealth of university is not about only degrees, but rather about competencies in terms of social innovation, in terms of skills for what we call social innovation and entrepreneurship skills. And this is very critical. Combining both, many people have the skills to have their own, to be their own managers as they graduate. When I look at students who started their own small business 30 years ago, my colleagues, and people who, and now they are very successful. After 30 years, they were able to do many things, and in this very simple path. They started very small, and now they are having family businesses, and they are growing very rapidly. So I think it would be good to instill this type of mindset and culture, that we are not prepared you to be an employee, but rather we are preparing you to be a manager or an entrepreneur. Any more questions?
Yes, please, Dr. Man.
Yes, Prof. Kabashi, please.
Okay, thank you.
Introduce yourself, and then you can ask your question.
Okay, please. I'm here, Dr. Nasruddin Ahmed Kabashi from Kulliyyah Engineering, Department of Chemical Engineering. Thank you very well, Prof. Odeh Al-Jayyousi, and thank you, Dr. Man, and all ICEPE for being here today after quite a long time with this MCO and COVID-19. Prof, my question is that I talk about this sustainability in education. One of the most important part now I see for sustainability in education, I understand that the thing before coronavirus, there will be two generations now, or two era. One before coronavirus, another one after coronavirus. What do you think nowadays will the new generation of this in engineering is specific after this coronavirus? Because now we see how the level of the students, everything now will start to be degraded, not like earlier time, for quite even long time whenever see student face to face. There are so many things now has been changed. I do believe that if this one continue for another 1 or 2 years, we will have, I don't know what type of student we'll have. Really, I cannot predict up to now. So what do you think, how to sustain all of this thing for engineering education? Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's very good question. Thank you, Nasruddin. Jazakallahu khairan. I think, let me share with you my personal experience with my teenagers. My son is in his first year of college. He finished his 12th grade and virtually, and then first year. It was very hard for him to cope with virtual, and he said, I'm not learning anything. So what we did in our community, in our neighborhood, we developed what we call a one-to-one peer learning with parents. So we, after every week, we have one-to-one tutoring and discussion with the students. So we bring students in the neighborhood, and we discuss things, and we do exercises, and they find it very, very, very helpful to understand the main concepts. And people, you change this type of digital communication to more humane touch. So at my personal experience, you can compensate this. The answer to the question, we should not limit the communication between student and university. We need to develop two levels. Even at our PhD program, we have PhD students. We conduct what we call research labs, virtual labs, periodically, every month, every week sometimes. And we ask students to discuss with each other every week. And they find it very enlightening, very informative. And we challenge students, like exactly we said, what about this? And later we do what we call peer-to-peer learning. So if some students are good in literature review or certain tools in statistics, we ask them to work with other students. So now, instead of having one relationship between student-teacher, we are developing two levels. At my personal experience, parents should have a role if it's undergraduate or before that, if possible. That's my experience. Also, I think peer-to-peer learning is very critical, which basically is to encourage peers to have a weekly meeting or monthly meeting, like study groups. And the role of the teacher is to facilitate discussion. And sometimes you have good students can help students to communicate and explain certain phenomena and certain concepts. So it's very interactive, and it's very the feedback was very positive so far.
Okay, before we move to the next question, let me welcome our Honorable Rector, Tansri Professor Zulkifli. Thank you very much for joining us. We are now in the Q&A session. I would have really wished that you join us earlier. I'm very sure you are busy. The presentation was very much like IIUM presentations on sustainability and education. And it's very much in line with what we are actually promoting in the university. Probably, hopefully, maybe later we can arrange a discussion between Tansri and Prof. Odeh. I'm very sure you will have many things to discuss and share, because he was talking about STEM and STEAM. Talking about education should not be a commodity. Education should be to serve the community and the society. He was talking about the importance of ethics and spiritual in education, where we need to create this type of graduates. He talked about Sajatra, but not using the term Sajatra. They talk about graduates who are holistic, and probably maybe Tansri, if you would like to just say a few words, please.
Yes. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum, Prof. Odeh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. It's a pleasure.
Yes.
Thank you for joining.
Yes, sorry to miss it. Just at the end of it, maybe I can
No problem.
Yeah.
No problem.
I am very excited when I got this email from Ma'an, but I've got another what do you call session.
I'll share the presentation. No problem.
Yeah, but I think you are recording it, so I will take time to listen to it, and inshallah we'll come back. It's good if we can work together.
Sure.
Yeah, I think this is the same.
Sure, with a pleasure. We have collaboration with Germany and other universities. We'll be glad to have joint research with IIUM.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Go ahead. I will not disturb you. I'll go on listening and see if there's question. I'll ask some question, inshallah.
Okay,
thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
So again, I open the floor to for question. Any more questions from the audience? I think I saw Prof. Zuraida was there.
Mahfouza, I think, Sultana.
Yeah. Sister Mahfouza, please proceed with your question.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Okay. Thank you so much for so very informative talk. Prof, I would like to ask that, as you said that competency education. So I am a student, PG student. So say for example, if I learn something in PG, okay, but in future, suppose if I want to do some like what entrepreneur work, as you said that, I mean, will you please tell some example like how can I utilize my education to implement in entrepreneurship?
Sure. Thank you, Sister Mahfouza. I think a very good question. I think part of the what we call industry university collaboration is critical to solidify and enhance in the 21st century. Apprenticeship is very, or internship. In many universities, we have a workshop for the students can learn some technical skills, but also during summer vacation, starting from year one, not only for the last year, it would be good to build what we call apprenticeship or internship program that build the competencies. So you understand the corporate culture or the industrial culture, and also you gain some skills in computer communication skills and team building. So I think this idea of enhancing the industry university collaboration and building this type of long-term internships is critical. Besides, I believe in the university, we try to develop what we call social innovation labs. The idea of social innovation labs is to identify social problems or environmental problems, and to try to work in a team with experts to develop project-based learning. So part of the learning will be basically on problem-based learning and project-based learning rather than theoretical. So having this type of living labs and social innovation lab, it's a critical, especially in this type of pandemic.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Sister Mahfouza. Any other questions from the floor?
Assalamu alaikum, Prof. Chairman. I would like to ask questions to the Prof. Odeh regarding the Generation Z.
Yes, please.
All right. Okay. We know that these generations, Generation Z, they are what we call it. They are effects of technology. They are type of Internet of Things, less sociable, but how can what we call it? They are multitasker and they want to jump to the. They don't want to go through the process. They want everything to make it easy. And I experienced that because I'm teaching engineering ethics, and we have university social responsibility. And I'm teaching also an integrated design project where they want the result without they go through the challenge. But how can we make it that they are a little bit patient on that?
I think, thank you very much, Sister Zuraida. I think very good question. Thank you. I think basically going to the basics, to our roots, our culture. I think part of our roots, how we were taught at early stage before the digital era, is very critical. I think first linking to nature. I think going into certain exploration from nature and having some outings, or it is very critical for all students. We use even in engineering to have field visits to factories and to big projects. I remember that 3 decades ago. So having this interaction with what's happening on the ground, field visits, you build a humane and a culture of communication. So people are realizing that you need to have different skills rather than digital competency. So I think that's one simple suggestion. Another suggestion is basically what I call the Islamization of knowledge and practices. There are some interesting literature and practices, how we can embed our own local knowledge. For instance, if you look at from early morning, from Fajr to Isha, the Islamic culture is about socialization. So you pray together, you communicate, you Salat al-Rahim. So all these type of social dimension need to be enhanced. And we, even in our generation, people now are just sending messages for Eid Mubarak. We need to teach them that there should be a human dimension to our communication rather than just sending a message or a YouTube. And I think Generation Z, through this type of human interaction and through our rituals from Salah and Umrah and Hajj. I remember the first Umrah I made, it was in my first year of university. I still remember it. And still now we have a group after 30 years. We are communicating and remembering what did we learn out of this 1 week or 2 weeks workshop. It was a living lab because you communicate with each other. So I think it would be nice to have this type of more human social activities based on our culture from Salah and Umrah.
Thank you, Prof. Zuraida. Tansri, you want to say something?
Yeah, I would like. I can't resist this. One of the main obstacle in trying to bring sustainability into mainstream education, not only in IUM, I think generally, because we are all stuck with this whole idea of ranking. I don't know whether that's fashionable in your side,
yes,
but here it's almost to a level of obsession, that people wants to be ranked. And some of this ranking, certainly the one that we are being engaged in or asked to be engaged, although this university has nothing to do with it for now, issues of sustainability, spirituality, the human dimension that you've been talking about is not part of this ranking. Yes. We are just about publication, this tier journal, that tier journal, the translation of knowledge, the humanizing of knowledge do not come into this. Therefore, if you rush for ranking and you are forcing yourself into that, so all the other agendas that you've been talking about, which is very pleasing to me, cannot be put in because it doesn't count in the ranking. They don't care whether you're spiritually good or not. To them, as long as you publish, you can be the greatest crew on earth, they will still give you a high impact, and that will count. So how do you balance this in your side? How do you manage this kind of a problem?
Thank you very much, Dr. Abdul Razak. Very insightful comment. I think part of the challenge is we need to have our own ranking. I think part of OIC countries, we are 58 countries. We need to have our own reference frame, our own accreditation and quality assurance. We set standards, we don't follow standards. And I think as Ummah Wasat, median community, and Ummah Wasat needs to have a notion of ihsan and falah and happiness, redefining what constitutes excellence, redefining what constitutes ihsan and falah, and is very critical. And I think as Ummah Wasat, we have an ethical role, a moral responsibility globally to communicate this type of global standards and not to commodify education in terms of specific KPIs. We need to embed our own human dimension and spirituality globally. And I think unless we have our own identity, nobody will look us very seriously.
Alhamdulillah. We are planning for that. Maybe we can invite you. We are trying to reinvent this.
I'll be a volunteer. I'll be glad to volunteer. My pleasure.
Ma'an, you better remember this. Maybe in next month we will contact you. We are not planning to do this. It's time for us to rewrite this ranking thing, because my colleagues here is always asking me, why are we not in the ranking game? Why are we not in the ranking game? These are not the values that we want to promote. And why are we championing it? But the youngsters only will look at numbers. If you're number one, you're number good.
There is a story. Exactly. We need to look at, even in climate change, it's not about numbers, it's the narrative, the story behind it. So it's about the healing of a human mind and heart and relationship with the cosmos. I think this type of what we call eco-cosmic intelligence or naturalistic intelligence, we need to enhance all the multiple intelligences, not only the logical and the mathematical or the verbal, but rather beyond that.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Thank you very much. So the last few minutes is good enough for me. So
It's a pleasure.
we'll keep in
It's a
touch.
pleasure.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate. We'll
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Tasri, for joining us. The next question is from Dr. Siti Fawzia. Please proceed.
All right, inshallah, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hopefully this is going to be the last question. Right? All right, Prof, thank you very much for your enlightening speech and sharing. All right, as the Deputy Dean of Postgraduate of the Kulliyyah of Engineering, I would like to ask about how to actually we wanted to ensure balance between quality and quantity in terms of responsible research and lifelong learning, as well as not only looking at the producing only numbers, focusing on the postgraduate and research outputs. So hopefully you can share your thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Siti. I think the key message is to define our own research agenda based on our local needs. There are some global agenda people work on, nanotechnology or whatever, but at least now there are, if you look at the 1 billion people who are in poverty, they have very basic needs. And the pandemic showed us, if we do not invest in science and technology, we will be only recipients of vaccines. We need to develop our own human scientific capability for all vaccines, not only for COVID, but for poverty and governance and accreditation, as Mr. President has just mentioned. I believe that quantity and quality, we decide on our KPIs. In many cases, we need to set our own standards that research should support human livelihood, research should support human dignity, and research should support sustainability in our own local communities for those poor and marginalized. This is a good KPI. We are also global citizens. We can have no reason why we shouldn't have open innovation and global networks and global research. And I think alliances, working with the global alliances worldwide is very critical to speed up and be a catalyst for change. But we need to balance, as you are right, between quantity, quality, global, local, and regional. At the end of the day, we need to globalize consciousness, regionalize vision, and localize benefits. We need to make sure that what does this mean to the farmer in the far away in living a farm, living on $1 per day. Most poor people are in the Islamic countries, and most refugees are in Islamic countries. What are we doing for those marginalized and voiceless? So the research institutions should be able to provide simple solution, what we call frugal innovation, simple solutions that will have local benefits and harnessing local resources. This is the sustainability. Sustainability should be underpinned by local solutions and local benefits.
Thank you very much, Prof. Odeh.
Thank you.
I wish we could continue with the question and answer session. It's very interesting and very enlightening. However, we are always caught with the limits of time, and we have another session to move to. Thank you very much again. I'm very pleased having you with us today, and also thanks to our rector, Tasri Zulkifli, for joining us in this session. And